Good morning, everyone. Today is a good day. Um, Happy Monday here from Minneapolis. And today is a bit of a different experience. It's cool and overcast and a bit of a weather change. And this morning, as I got up and began my morning routine and ritual, it was a very different experience, on a felt sense or a somatic level. It's a much slower morning. I woke up pretty tired and just in a really slow rhythm. And so, as is my practice, I just kind of meet myself where I'm at and just slowly start to move into the day and just start meet myself where I'm at, and then slowly bring myself to that rhythm and meet the day with my vision for the day, my intentions for the day, as well as blending with that plan. So as is the practice in meditation, we meet ourselves and the day as it is, and then work with it and blend with it. So I see Darlene is on. Good morning, Darlene. And Henriette and Kathy are on. Good morning. And I see Mark is on. Good morning, Mark. Oast to you. So yeah, today I wanted to start to explore this last topic of our human freedom, these human abilities we have between the stimulus and the response. And for those of you that maybe just starting to listen to some of these posts, this idea of the stimulus is what happens to us. It's whatever comes into our life, or sometimes comes into our life and startles us, like a pandemic, where our status quo is disrupted, and then there's our response. And we have, as humans, have some hardwired responses, some survival responses, which are typically instinctual: fight, flight, freeze, appease, disassociate, kind of just check out. And what this notion of being able to pause and access these human freedoms is really powerful. Can change the course of our lives, our businesses, and can change the course of our response. In other words, we have more capacity to reimagine our response and do what it is we are inspired to do, versus just doing the thing we've always done. And so that's been the quote, the Viktor Frankl quote, which I've been sharing at the end of every post. And I thought I was doing a little cleaning of my office yesterday, and I thought I ran across the book. This is the iconic book where a lot of these ideas around the space between stimulus and response were shared from Viktor Frankl, and these were his basically his reflections, his learnings from his time spent in a concentration camp in Germany in World War II, and where he discovered that there were people that had developed this capacity under some of the most dire of circumstances. So I know when I first read that, and I read that book, and I read the circumstances under which he discovered that human beings could develop this freedom. when I read that, I thought, wow, you know, if people can cultivate that under some of the most dire circumstances, like a concentration camp, then, and to me, it opened my mind that was certainly accessible to me through study and practice. And so I was glad to find this book so I could just share this very small book, but very powerful book. And it really is, anybody who's ever read it, it is a life changer. And so those 4 human freedoms: self-awareness. We have the ability to be self-aware. We have the ability to access our creative imagination, and we have the ability to access our independent will. And the last conversation we're in is the cultivation of our conscience. And we already started to I started to allude to that, and with regard to when I talked about how we exercise our independent will through those illocutionary acts, or those speech acts, that when we have this unique ability to declare as human beings, like no other creature that I know of can declare a future that's something that doesn't exist with our words, and then make it so. You know, people, we declare that we're going to increase our, business by 20%. We do that with our words, and we declare that as a reality. People that hear us accept that as a reality, and they all start working and coordinating under making that that vision come true. So that's a powerful way that we use language to create a world that didn't exist before, or create a reality that didn't exist before. And then there's this other notion. The previous notion with the declaration is like bringing the world shaping the world to our imagination and what we see as possible, almost like a world to word to mind, or world to mind. And then there's this way that we have this mind. We can have this mind to world orientation, where we are in the active study of training our mind to learn, observe, and practice these universal laws, these classic, timeless human virtues, so that we slowly, over time, are developing a conscience that's in line with universal principles and timeless character qualities. And in my experience, that's a lifelong study. And it's something that's always been of interest to me, is to consciously work to embody principles that are worthy principles, and to just slowly keep developing that in myself over a lifetime. And so I started with one way to do that is to just start to recognize what are the natural laws that just govern the natural world. If we watch nature, I think of natural laws like physics, things that we don't necessarily always think about on a daily basis, yet they're ever present, and they're constantly part of our experience, whether we're paying attention to them or not. And we can learn to pay attention and educate our mind and our conscience to be in line, with those principles. And so these principles, natural laws, I wrote down a few. So there's this principle of vibration, so that everything that is everything in existence has some kind of vibration to it. We know that when we study in science and chemistry, we study atoms and molecules. They're all vibrating. They're all moving. So nothing's really ever completely still. There's some movement internally. So, and that really leads to this notion of the attraction, that things that are vibrating at a similar frequency tend to draw towards each other. So we can, on a personal level, and that's exemplified. How I've experienced it is if I'm if I have a high mood and a high level of thinking, I'm more than likely in that high vibrational mental emotional state going to connect with someone else that's in that state as well. If I'm in a low vibration or a low mood, it's going to be much harder for me to collaborate and synergize with somebody at that state. They may bring me up, may help bring me up from my low mood, but it isn't necessarily there's going to be a high collaboration or vibration. I'd have to work on shifting my mood, recentering. So this notion of vibration, everything's in some kind of constant state of movement, and like a musical note, there are low vibrations, high vibrations. Then relativity, this notion that things are true, especially for us subjective human beings. They're true, relatively, from a relative standpoint. That there are truths that are truths in context. They're situational, and just recognizing that. I guess go back to that parable of this too shall pass. That things on a subjective level can, in one moment, our mind says they're good relative to that moment, but our mind can't possibly understand the interconnectedness of all things. So what is we label bad on today might actually produce something our mind labels good on Friday. So that negative is relative. And so keeping our mind, educating our mind to and our conscience to understand relativity, so we don't get so stuck in that something is just completely bad, that it will likely have a lighter side or a happier side, or something that we perceive as beneficial. And cause and effect. So this notion, it's a physics concept, that there's cause and effect. That when we take an action, there's a response. And that happens on a physical level. It happens on an emotional, interpersonal level, where we take an action and there's an effect. I often think of in the area of, on the interpersonal level with cause and effect, when I think of the area, as I educated myself over the years and I got a chance to study with a lot of great people, there's this notion of cause and effect on the interpersonal level would be, when we harm somebody, or we hurt somebody or betray somebody, that we create a cause, and that has an effect. It has an effect, for example, on the relationship, and that there is this process in order to restore that relationship because of that cause and effect dynamic. That there's this way in order to create repair interpersonally. There's the steps of, confessing that we did something wrong, repenting, feeling bad about it, letting ourselves feel that, actually, if we go back into our somatic practices, and then, asking that person making an amends, asking them, can I fix this? If so, what can I do? What kind of acts of attrition do I need to do to restore the balance in our relationship, so we can it can be healed and we can move forward. So I think of the cause and effect relationships interpersonally of how we hurt each other as human beings, and then the cause and effect relationships of the steps we need to take to make amends and repair relationships. So that's another way I've experienced to educate my conscience, is really for a good portion. I did a whole study on forgiveness and what are the steps of forgiveness in order to not only just acknowledge when I do something wrong, or if somebody does something wrong to me, like how do we find our way back to a healed, restored relationship. So that's a conscience education. And then I alluded a little bit in my writing yesterday to a polarity. And so polarity, that this world we live in is governed by polarity. There is the balance of opposites. And this one, to my mind, when I first started to become aware of this and study polarity, this was like it was like melting my mind, because it doesn't make it on the surface, it doesn't make rational sense that that opposites are complementary, where before I started this study of things like Aikido, and actively started studying these natural laws, opposites are opposites, and I never had thought to see them as complementary. I always thought them as in complete opposition. So examples of that are I wrote about virtues, how we have complementary virtues, and that is a philosophy, actually, in Stoic philosophy. I haven't used this word in a long time, and I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, but anakaluthia is the mutual attainment of virtues. Mutual entailment of virtues. In other words, no virtue is a virtue by itself. That every virtue has a counterbalancing virtue, which brings us to this this notion that if we have this, if we take honesty and compassion, they seem on the surface, I hear them, and maybe you hear them, and it's like both. They seem like both very good things. And from this polarity perspective, that they're complementary, is that honesty without compassion is cruelty, and compassion without honesty is indulgence. And so that this notion that we can be so honest that we lack the counterbalancing virtue of compassion, so we go around just telling every person we meet just what we think as it is, then we don't necessarily think about what they can mentally and emotionally handle, where they actually become stronger from the honesty versus being completely wiped out or crushed by it. And that takes emotional intelligence to deliver that same message to the level that it can land on them, and they can become stronger from the honesty. And then compassion, we could be so compassionate, we never really offer people the feedback that about the consequences of what they've done, or whatever the case may be. It's so soft and so nice. It's too nice that it limits the relationship, or it limits the relationship, or the things that are truly breakdowns never really get discussed, and so it can limit the relationship, or eventually the partnership or the friendship or whatever just really can't flourish. So polarity, and how polarity doesn't just exist in our interpersonal relationships. It's happening at an atomic level, a chemical level, that this world is this delicate and dynamic balance of opposites. I also think of the martial art of Aikido, because that's really that concept brought to the interpersonal level, but brought in the martial context. And one of the phrases that align with polarity was a phrase I heard early on, which was baffling to me, was this belief that conflict is the beginning of harmony. And I remember hearing that, and that didn't make any sense to my rational mind at that time, because in the way I had organized it in my life, I thought, well, all my conflicts are over here, and all my harmonies are over here, and I did my best to build a nice metaphorical wall so they didn't touch. I didn't want any of my conflicts, contaminating any of my wonderful things in my life. And so being introduced to this Aikido principle of conflict is the beginning of harmony, well, that kind of started to shake up my worldview. And what was compelling to me was it wasn't just something that a nice poetic phrase that somebody said and seemed nice. Then moments later, we were on the mat demonstrating, with somebody demonstrating transforming conflict into harmony. So the very next moment, I saw somebody out on the mat, somebody coming with an attack with their right hand, and I watched the defender step into that punch or that attack and connect with it and spin that person down into a spiral and neutralize that attack, or rotate them and send them out into a roll where they weren't hurt and the attacker wasn't hurt. So my mind was just like, wow, like I never thought to have that belief, and then I'd never thought how to organize my body in a way, in this kind of spiral way, to defend myself but not harm the person that's attacking. And if you remember from my previous post, I came from the grappling arts, from wrestling. So, I understood some of that, that feeling into that grappling, but my orientation was to pin that person, to win. And so this was a whole new way for me to think, and then to step onto the mat and actually experience conflict being transformed into harmony was really powerful. And so, of course, that's for me. It really shifted how my orientation to life. I started to see that in my life, and I started to integrate that as a belief of mine into my character structure. And so now, when conflict happens, what's embodied in me is the phrase that comes into my mind is conflict is the beginning of harmony. That conflict is generative. And conflict isn't bad, it's just the opposite of harmony. And in every conflict is the potential for a new harmony, something new that we enjoy, that's a new level of balance, of homeostasis. And so with that thought and that mindset and that background, I enter into conflicts very differently, looking for the opportunity, looking for, noticing what old is fading away, and what new things are going to come out of this conflict. It keeps me in a positive mental emotional state when things are starting to fade away or fall apart, and it keeps me looking with intention for what will grow out of it, and that really has found its way into my life completely, from intrapersonally, interpersonally, business, everything, every aspect of life. I really embrace this belief that conflict is the beginning of harmony, and to look for it. And so that's an example of integrating this natural law of polarity into multiple domains of our life, and educating our conscience around that's a possibility. Then the other natural law here that I'll cover tomorrow, and then I'll cover these last three tomorrow, which are gestation, rhythm, and transmutation, as just natural laws that exist in nature, and just share some stories about how they have the awareness of those principles, how I've allowed those principles not just to exist out in the natural world, but to educate my mind so that I start to embody those principles in my personal life. I'll share those as well. So I think I'll pause here at polarity and this concept of conflict is the beginning of harmony, and the possibility that conflict is generative, conflict is creative, and that possibility that in our own conscience we can start to open up to that, and not just take it at the word of a book that we read, but to put it into practice, as the Aikido metaphor or the wrestling metaphor is, it's a great idea, but put it on the mat, put it into practice, and see if it actually, this belief can create the satisfaction that it claims to be able to do. That's certainly what I did. I started to work with these concepts as a laboratory in my own life, and they proved to be roadworthy. So let's begin here. Let's begin with our centering practice here as we get ready for our meditation. Let's start to feel into our mood here, and so just notice what your mood is at this moment, and meeting that mood without judgment, without attachment, and without resistance. And then let's begin by either whether you're standing or sitting, just begin to relax your eyes. So you can soften your eyes. And relax your jaw and chin. And relaxing your neck. Really start to pay attention to these different sections of your body, building our self-awareness. Bring your attention to your shoulders. Bring your shoulders up. And then drop your shoulders down. And feel shoulders up. And dropping your shoulders down. And then bring your attention to your chest. So opening your chest. You can use the imagery, imagine it's opening like a book. Or you can imagine it, like a scroll. You're opening it up like a scroll. Or you can imagine like butterfly wings opening up. Or anything that comes to you that is this visual of opening. That imagery of imagining something like that, we know from neurological testing that the imagery creates a low-grade neurological signal to let the muscles start to open and change. So just creating that image in your chest of your chest opening. Relaxing your diaphragm so that our large breathing muscle here, at the lower border of our rib cage. Relaxing your belly. So you can, sometimes if there's tension in my belly, there's a practice called Shinkan meditation. I'll just create a vibration at my center. And the vibration can help loosen those tension patterns in your muscles. Then bringing your attention to your hips. So bringing your attention to your hips. Pulling your pelvis. Looks like your shoulders will contract and relax there. So pulling up and in. And release. Good. Pulling up and in. And exhale. Relaxing your thighs. Relaxing your knees and calves. Your shins. Your feet. And relaxing your toes. And so what we're doing is systematically releasing the muscular tension in our body from head to toe. And as we do that, starting to create space internally on a somatic level so we can feel more. We can access more of that information from our limbic and autonomic part of our nervous system. And then let's begin with centering here in our length. So standing or seated. So find your vertical line here. Straightening in your vertical line. Feel yourself, you're both straightening and settling. As you feel into your vertical line, feel that felt sense of length or tallness. And use your imagination. Imagine that felt sense of your vertical line as that you're a bridge between heaven and earth. And as you feel into that, you feel into your own body from the somatic and first person point of view. Just to feel that bridge and feeling how you can, from this point, you can have a spiritual vision or create a vision of what you're called to bring in to the world, with your feet and hips planted firmly on the ground, so you can take action in line with that vision. We're creating that balance between spirituality and practicality. Sometimes we can be so practical, we won't let ourselves dream. Sometimes we can be so spiritual that our ideas just float off and we can't actually take the actual actions to bring it into reality. And so from this standpoint, balancing in our length, we're starting to cultivate the ability to tie into our creative imagination, at the same time connecting to our physicality and our practicality, so we can bring those visions into this world, into this physical world. So with your attention and your imagination, take a deep breath in through the crown of your head. Pull that breath through, exhale out through your feet and hands. Take a deep breath in through your feet and hands. Exhale out through the crown of your head. One more time, a deep breath in through the crown of your head. Exhale out through your feet and hands. Just take a moment to feel yourself centered in your length. While still feeling your length, let's start to bring our attention to our width from left to right. Placing our left hand on our chest or right over our heart, right hand on our belly. So our width is about our balance between self and others. So we'll start with ourself, bringing attention to our commitment to our personal boundaries, feeling those as the felt sense of the boundaries of our skin. We decide who comes in, who stays at a distance. And bringing our attention to ways that we're cultivating ourselves through our personal growth, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And then start to extend your arms out just a little bit. And start to include maybe somebody that's in your home right now. Start to include them in your field of awareness while still feeling yourself. And then extending out to this virtual circle that we have this morning. So just imagining everybody on this call in a circle. So I'm imagining Darlene and Henrietta and Kathy and Mark and Jody and Mark and Jamie, Elizabeth and Slavko. So just using imagination that you're all here, we're all live in this self-awareness and meditation practice. See if you can let your imagination go there. And then extending out to one other person that's another friend of yours that is not here, not even on this post, but is just someone who you know has your back, who's been there for you through thick and thin. Imagine they're standing next to you or in this virtual circle. And then let's reach out and extend out a little further. See if we can reach out and extend out to somebody that is an opponent or an adversary of ours, or somebody who hurt us, an enemy that we have, and see if we can extend some love and compassion to them. Maybe for just even a few moments, letting go of our grievances, softening a bit. Let's take a deep breath in through our left hand. Pull that breath through your body with your imagination and attention. Bring that breath through, exhale out your right hand. Take a deep breath in through your right hand. Pull that breath through, exhale out your left hand. Centering in our width, that dynamic balance of taking care of self and taking care of others. And relaxing your arms down. And let's bring our attention to our depth, our somatic depth. This is that plane, that dimension of front to back. So at our back, let's just lean back and feel into our history, all those experiences that have preceded this one. All those experiences that have shaped our character, shaped our beliefs, those wonderful times, those great times, and those challenging times, feeling those at our back. That we learned something from every one of them. Let's lean forward and just feel into the space in front of us. As you feel into the space in front of you, just connecting to the future, maybe just the future of today. What's your vision for today? What's your vision for the morning? Rather than just allowing the day to unfold in a reactive way, how can we be a creative force? How can we imagine it and author it? Think of visions, longer horizons of time, a month from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now. Also, be connected to your longings and your yearnings, areas of personal growth that you know it's time to start to cultivate, start to practice, parts of your personality that may have served you well for years. They may no longer be useful to you, and what are you longing to set down? And as far as those parts of your character or your personality that are no longer useful, and what's next? What can you grow in yourself that is life-giving and is going to help you move forward and really embrace life? And let's find center here. So with our physical body, we're finding placing all our weight down through our bones, through our skeletal system. So we have that felt sense of being in the present moment. We can feel our history at our back, but we're not living there. And we have our future and our visions, our longings and yearnings that are like a compass guiding us into the future, but we're not living there. In other words, we're not hoping that one day when this future event happens, we'll be at peace or we'll be happy. We're recognizing that the power is in here, in the now, in the present moment, and that the quality of our consciousness in the present moment will shape our future. And so let's begin to do that with some imagery. So about 10 feet in front of you, take a deep breath in and imagine that as your future. Breathe that in through your body, exhale out into your past, about 10 feet behind you. Take a deep breath in, 10 feet behind you, pull that breath through your body, exhale out into your future, about 10 feet in front of you. And then one more breath, breathing in your future, pull that breath through, exhale out into your back. And just feeling yourself centered in your depth. Let's bring attention and energy to your right hand. In other words, feel the temperature of your hand. My hand feels warm. Without looking at it, I can feel the shape of my fingers. And place that right over your navel. And as you feel your hand on your navel, allow the sensation and the shape of your hand, allow that to help you drop out of your thinking self and into your feeling self. And let's take 3 deep breaths here. So a deep breath into your center. And a second breath, a deep breath into your felt sense of purpose. And a third breath, a deep breath into the mystery, all that which is beyond our human knowing. Take a moment to feel. I invite you to close your eyes as we begin our meditation today. And as you close your eyes, begin to set your intention. Remind yourself for the sake of what that you're doing the practice. The world does not revolve around you. The stars and the planets spinning through the ballroom of space dance with one another quite outside your small life. You cannot hold gravity or seasons. Even air and water inevitably evade your grasp. Why not then let go? Why not then let go? You could move through time like a shark through water, neither restless nor ceasing, absorbed in and absorbing the native element. Why pretend you can do otherwise? The world comes in at every pore, mixes in your blood before breath releases you into the world again. Did you think the fragile boundary of your skin could build a wall? Listen. Every molecule is humming its particular pitch. Of course, you are a symphony. Whose tune do you think the planets are singing as they dance? The world does not revolve around you. The stars and the planets spinning through the ballroom of space dance with one another quite outside your small life. You cannot hold gravity or seasons. Even air and water inevitably evade your grasp. Why not then let go? Why not then let go? You could move through time like a shark through water, neither restless nor ceasing, absorbed in and absorbing the native element. Why pretend you can do otherwise? The world comes in at every pore, mixes in your blood before breath releases you into the world again. Did you think the fragile boundary of your skin could build a wall? Listen. Every molecule is humming its particular pitch. Of course, you are a symphony. Whose tune do you think the planets are singing as they dance? And as we close our practice today, remind yourself again, for the sake of what? And then on your next exhale, very slowly and very gently begin to move your arms and legs. And very gently and very slowly begin to open your eyes and let the outside world come back in again. Take a moment to recognize your mood right now. Notice if that's shifted. For me, my mood has really shifted into grounded and open. And just notice if your mood has shifted. Just notice if there's new possibilities, new thoughts that are possible, new actions that are possible. And just recognizing that those shifts that are created are accessible to us at any time, any moment of our life, if we just take the time to tie into our self-awareness and be in some very simple practices. So thank you all for creating this this virtual circle, this virtual space this morning, creating this community. I know every morning that I share this reflection, I'm blessed in return because it sets the trajectory for my day, having spent this virtual time with everyone. And it's my sincerest hope that as you come live or you listen on the recording, that it creates some positive intention for each of your days as well. So tomorrow, again, 7 a.m., we'll be studying this cultivation of conscience, and I'll be exploring these last three natural laws of gestation, rhythm, and transmutation, and just sharing reflections on how these natural laws that exist in nature, how I've experienced them translate into my own life at a personal level, and how they've educated my conscience and my sense of right and wrong, and the actions that I take. So again, thank you for the time, and blessings on your day. We'll see you tomorrow.